Hello, my fellow farmers, homesteaders, backyard chicken keepers, and everyone working hard to build a healthier flock and a more productive home farm. Welcome back to Farmyard Care. This is the place where we talk about practical agriculture, smart garden living, and real flock management in a way that actually helps you in daily life. Let me ask you something. What really separates a strong, profitable layer flock from one that keeps eating feed but never seems to give enough back? Many people focus only on costly protein rations, expensive coop setups, or complicated lighting programs. But what if one of the most overlooked tools for better laying performance has been sitting in your kitchen all along? Yes, I'm talking about ordinary table salt. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? How can something so common have such a powerful effect on egg production, bird health, feed efficiency, and even flock behavior? But after years of watching how small nutrition mistakes create big farm problems, I can tell you this. The right amount of salt can support appetite, body balance, digestion, and steady egg output. Get that balance wrong, however, and the same ingredient can contribute to wet litter, weak shells, stress in the coop, and serious pecking problems. So whether you are raising a few hens behind the house, managing a growing family flock, or trying to make your poultry work more efficiently alongside your garden and homestead, this is a lesson worth paying close attention to. In today's video, we're going to break down the hidden role salt plays inside a laying hen's body, why it matters so much, and how one small detail in nutrition can change the direction of your entire flock. If you enjoy practical, experience-based farming advice like this, make sure you subscribe to Farmyard Care and join our growing community before we move into the science behind it all. Part 1. The hidden engine. What salt actually does inside a hen. To really understand why salt matters so much, we have to go inside the hen's body and look at what is happening beneath the feathers. So what is salt exactly? In simple terms, table salt is sodium chloride, and both of those elements are essential if you expect a laying hen not only to stay alive, but to eat well, stay balanced, and keep producing eggs consistently. Let's start with sodium. Inside the hen's body, sodium is one of the key minerals controlling the fluid that surrounds her cells. In other words, it helps manage water balance, blood volume, and normal blood pressure. I often tell people to think of sodium as the traffic controller for hydration inside the bird. It also helps power the sodium-potassium pump, which is critical for nerve signals, muscle movement, and many of the basic functions a healthy hen depends on every single day. When sodium levels drop too low, the body begins protecting itself. Appetite falls, feed intake drops, and that is where the real trouble begins. A hen that eats less also takes in less calcium, less energy, and fewer nutrients needed for strong, steady egg production. Now let's look at chloride, the other half of salt. Chloride is necessary for the production of hydrochloric acid in the proventriculus and gizzard, which is essentially the hen's digestive acid system. That acid helps break down feed, activate protein digestion, and create an environment that is much harder for harmful organisms to survive in once they enter the gut. If chloride is lacking, feed is not digested as efficiently, protein use declines, and amino acid absorption suffers. At that point, you may still be buying feed, but your birds are not getting the full value out of what you are paying for. And when you step back and think about it, that is the surprising truth so many flock owners miss. A small amount of salt is doing an enormous amount of work inside the bird. It helps drive digestion, hydration, and the basic internal balance that keeps a layer hen productive. And once you understand that, the next question becomes even more important. What happens when that balance starts to break down? Part 2. The dark side of deficiency, when flocks turn cannibalistic. Now let me ask you something that every poultry keeper dreads. Have you ever walked into the coop in the morning and found birds with missing feathers, raw skin, or blood around the vent, only to realize the flock has started pecking one another. It is one of the ugliest problems in poultry keeping, and once it begins, it can spread fast. A little pecking is normal in any flock because chickens establish order through social behavior. But when feather pulling becomes aggressive and vent pecking turns into tissue damage, you are no longer dealing with harmless flock behavior. You are dealing with a serious management problem that can escalate into cannibalism. A lot of people blame this only on overcrowding, heat, stress, or boredom. And yes, those factors matter. But there is another cause that many small flock owners overlook, and that is a deficiency in sodium and chloride. Most of the sodium in a chicken's body is associated with the blood and body fluids. When birds are not getting enough salt through the diet, their bodies begin pushing them to seek it elsewhere. And unfortunately, once a bird discovers that blood from another hen contains the salt it is craving, that pecking can intensify very quickly. One bird starts, another copies, and before long, the entire coop can become restless, violent, and dangerous. The encouraging part is that this is sometimes one of the quickest problems to correct if you catch it early. In real farm situations, many keepers have found that the first thing worth checking when pecking suddenly flares up is salt balance in the ration. If the flock is truly short on salt, a temporary correction can calm the birds and reduce that frantic craving. In some cases, adding 1 tablespoon of salt per gallon of drinking water for one morning has helped settle an active outbreak. It is remarkable how such a basic mineral can make the difference between chaos and calm inside a coop. But as important as that is, this is where experience really matters. Because the mistake many people make after hearing this is assuming that if a little salt helps, then more must be even better. And that is exactly where things can go badly wrong. Part 3, the danger of excess, toxicity, wet litter, and the disease trap. So let's clear this up right away. If too little salt is dangerous, that does not mean you should start throwing extra salt into the feed. Absolutely not. This is where salt stops being a helpful tool and starts becoming a serious hazard. In poultry, excess salt can be a silent killer, and the damage usually begins long before the owner realizes what is happening. Salt poisoning, also called sodium toxicosis, usually happens when feed is mixed incorrectly or when birds do not have enough fresh water available to handle the salt level they are consuming. Once sodium rises too high in the body, the hen has to fight to restore balance. Her kidneys work hard to remove the excess, and she begins drinking far more water in an attempt to dilute the sodium in her bloodstream. That heavy water intake may sound like a small issue at first, but it quickly creates a chain reaction across the entire coop. The droppings become wet and watery. The litter that was dry and comfortable turns damp, sticky, and foul. And once litter stays wet, you have opened the door to a whole new set of problems. Ammonia starts building up, irritating the bird's eyes and respiratory system. The air quality gets worse, the flock becomes more vulnerable, and conditions start favoring disease. On top of that, warm, wet litter creates an ideal breeding environment for Eimeria, the parasite responsible for coccidiosis. That means a simple salt mistake in the ration can end up triggering a larger health crisis that affects growth, egg output, and farm profit all at once. And this is why salt must be handled with real care. Oversalting feed is not just a minor mixing error. It can lead to excessive thirst, diarrhea, weakness, poor coordination, paddling of the feet, convulsions, and in severe cases, sudden death. Salt is powerful, useful, and necessary, but only when it is kept in balance. And that balance becomes even more important when we start looking at something every layer farmer cares about most of all: the quality of the eggshell itself. Part 4, the eggshell paradox, why balance is everything. And that brings us to the outcome every layer keeper cares about most: the eggs themselves. A healthy laying hen is an incredible machine, turning feed into a complete egg in about 25 hours when she is in strong production. But here is the eggshell paradox that confuses so many flock owners. An eggshell is made up of roughly 97% calcium carbonate, and building that shell inside the hen requires a very precise supply of calcium and bicarbonate. Salt is absolutely important for the bird's overall health, but too much sodium chloride, especially when extra chloride is also coming in through the water, can quietly begin destroying shell quality. So how does that happen? When chloride intake becomes too high, it interferes with the bird's internal chemistry and reduces the activity of an important enzyme in the shell gland called carbonic anhydrase. That enzyme helps provide bicarbonate, and without enough bicarbonate, calcium cannot do its job properly. The result is exactly what no egg producer wants to see: thin shells, soft shells, misshapen eggs, and sometimes even shellless eggs. And that is what makes this so frustrating. You may think you are helping your hens by giving them more minerals, while in reality you are damaging the very egg quality you are trying to improve. This is why balance matters so much in layer nutrition. And once summer heat enters the picture, that balance becomes even harder to maintain. Part 5. The Summer Hack: Heat Stress in Sodium Bicarbonate. Now let me share one of the most useful warm weather strategies experienced poultry keepers rely on when temperatures start climbing. When the weather rises above the bird's comfort zone, your hens begin dealing with heat stress. And because chickens cannot sweat, they have to cool themselves by panting. But that cooling method comes with a cost. When a hen pants heavily, she blows off large amounts of carbon dioxide. That loss of CO2 changes the chemistry of her blood and can push her into what is known as respiratory alkalosis, where blood pH rises higher than it should. To compensate, the kidneys begin flushing out bicarbonate, and that is where the real problem begins. Bicarbonate is exactly what the hen needs to help form strong eggshells. So during hot weather, while the bird is simply trying to stay alive and cool herself down, she is also losing one of the key building blocks required for shell formation. That is why eggs laid in summer often come out thinner, rougher, and much easier to crack. So what is the practical solution? During periods of heat stress, many skilled farmers partially replace regular salt with sodium bicarbonate, which is simply baking soda. By adding around 0.3 to 0.5% sodium bicarbonate to the ration, you help buffer blood pH while also supplying the bicarbonate needed to support better shell quality. It is a simple adjustment, but it can make a huge difference. And one more important caution here: do not add vinegar to the water during extreme heat, because acidic water can reduce calcium digestibility at exactly the time your hens need it most. So now the big question is this: how do we take all of this science and use it correctly in everyday feeding? Part 6. Mastering the Mix: Practical Tips for Farmyard Success. We have talked about the science inside the bird, the risks of deficiency, the danger of excess, and the smart adjustment for hot weather. Now let's bring it down to practical farm work. How do you actually manage salt the right way in a real flock? The first rule is simple and extremely important. If you are feeding a complete commercial layer ration, the salt level has already been balanced by nutrition professionals. Do not add extra salt to that feed. It is already formulated to meet the bird's needs, and adding more can do real harm. Now, if you are mixing your own feed at home using local grains and ingredients to save money, then precision becomes absolutely critical. For most homemade layer rations, the target is usually around 0.4 to 0.6% salt. That may sound like a very small amount, but that is exactly why mistakes happen so easily. Salt is included in such a tiny proportion that uneven mixing can create concentrated pockets. And if a few birds happen to eat those pockets, you can end up with toxicity even if the overall batch looked fine on paper. The best way to avoid that is to use a pre-mix method. Start by using a digital scale with a tare function so your measurements are accurate. No estimating by eye, no guessing with handfuls or cups. Then take the measured salt and mix it thoroughly into a smaller amount of carrier material, such as limestone or a few pounds of grain. Once that smaller batch is blended evenly, add it into the larger feed mix and turn everything over carefully until the whole ration is uniform, including the corners and bottom of the mixer or wheelbarrow. And let me finish this section with one warning that can save people a lot of trouble. Many flock owners enjoy giving kitchen leftovers as treats, but salty human foods should never go to laying hens. That includes bacon, ham, lunch meats, salted fries, chips, and similar scraps. More than one flock has been seriously harmed because someone thought they were being generous. Keep treats simple, natural, and safe, and keep salt under control. Because when you manage it properly, salt becomes a tool. When you handle it carelessly, it becomes a problem. Conclusion. Who would have thought that something as ordinary as table salt could have such a powerful effect on the success of a layer flock? Yet it truly can be the difference between a calm, productive coop and one filled with stress, weak eggs, disease pressure, and preventable losses. When you understand how sodium and chloride work inside the bird, when you know how to respond during heat stress, and when you mix feed with real care and accuracy, you move beyond simply keeping chickens. You begin managing nutrition with purpose, and that is what separates guesswork from good flock performance. Now, I would love to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with pecking problems in your flock or noticed eggshells getting thinner during hot weather? Have you ever tried using baking soda as part of your summer management? Share your experience and your questions in the comments below, because those real farm stories help everyone learn. And if this video gave you a new way of thinking about poultry nutrition, be sure to hit the like button, share it with another chicken keeper, and subscribe to Farmyard Care for more practical, experience-based farming advice. Until next time, keep your flock healthy, keep your litter dry, and happy farming.